Dear students, welcome to EPG Padashala. I am Dr. Sridevi Sivakami, Associate Professor in the Department of Food Service Management, here to discuss with you on the interesting module on maternal nutrition and fetal outcomes. The entire term between consumption and the birth, normally 40 weeks, is called as a prenatal period. From early in the perinatal period, the organism is enclosed in a sac attached to the one side of the mother's uterus and filled with the amniotic fluid, which equalizes the pressure on the embryo. The embryo gets nourishment through the umbilical cord from the placenta, an organ that develops for this purpose. The placenta receives the nourishment and oxygen from the mother's bloodstream. This also passes the waste material from the fetal circulatory system back into the bloodstream of the mother. There is no nerves connecting the mother and the unborn infant, nor this is there a direct connection of the blood vessels. Some viruses can pass through the placenta to infect the fetus, as can drugs used to combat diseases of the mother or administered to the mother for the purposes. Thus, the physician must be very careful about the medication they prescribe for the pregnant mother. The general well-being and the nutritional requirements of these young mothers have recently received more attention, especially in developing and underdeveloped countries. It has been shown that early childbearing mothers were at the higher risk of prenatal morbidities such as gestational diabetes, gestational hypertension, and preterm labor compared to the general population. The risk of the pregnancy-related mortality for the mothers aged between 15 to 19 years was twice as compared to those aged of 20 and older. The mortality risk could be 5 to 7 times higher for the mothers who become pregnant before the age of 15. Some anthropometric and socio-economic factors has been associated with adverse health consequences among the adolescent mother. The pelvic bone of the young mothers may not have fully developed to accommodate the passage of the babies, increasing the risk of obstructed labor. After reading this module, you will be able to understand the nutrition needs and the demands required to the body during the maternal period and the fetal nutrition and its outcome during the prenatal period. Let us discuss in detail about why nutritional need is important during pregnancy. The nutritional needs depends upon the 4 important factors. Those are the age and parity, the pre-consumption nutrition, the individual nutritional needs, and the last one is on the complex metabolic interaction of the gestation. Do you know how the energy cost of pregnancy is calculated? Yes. 60% of energy cost of pregnancy is being used for the fetus, the placenta, and the maternal tissues. The remaining 40 towards the increased BMR, that is nothing but the basal metabolic rate, which extra work done by the maternal cardiovascular, respiratory and other system. For the reference Indian women who weighs about 50 kg, her total energy cost of pregnancy has been estimated to be 73,000 kilocalorie. This includes the energy required for the deposition of 4 kg of body weight to be utilized later during lactation. Considering the increased energy demand during lactation and the beneficial effect of the increased energy intake on a birth weight of the infant and also the protein sparing action, an additional intake of 300 kilocalorie per day during pregnancy is recommended. On the whole, in case of sedentary or heavy or moderate worker, the calories will be depending upon the activity. The pregnancy are the minimal and increased towards the first trimester and constant towards the second and third trimester. The next important nutrient is a protein. The protein has been required to about 50 gram per day, increased by 15, additional 15 grams per day have to be given in order to meet the growth of the fetus, the uterus, the placental tissues, then comes the breast and the amniotic fluids up to 20 weeks. All amino acid must be provided to the fetus. The most important nutrient that has been required to the pregnant mother, it can be a fat molecules. The fat is being recommended by the ICMR is about 30 gram of visible fat per day during pregnancy. This is based on the studies indicating that linoleic acid requirements during this stage are 4.5% of total energy. Of this, some of the essential fatty acid needs to be met with the invisible fat. Now let us discuss why iron is more important during gestation period. The total iron requirement of pregnancy is about 800 to 1000 milligram. At least 300 milligrams of iron is being transferred to the fetus during gestation. As we all know that at the time of birth, the infant is born with the high hemoglobin levels. The iron stores in the liver of the infant last for 3 to 6 months. To meet this, Indian diet provides about 20 to 22 gram per day, and the absorption in a non-pregnant women is about 10% from the diet and doubled in the case of pregnant women. 30 milligram of iron is being required. It has been increased to 38 milligram in case of in the gestation period. It is recommended that 60 milligram of elemental iron should be supplemented daily with 500 microgram of folic acid during 12 to 16 weeks of pregnancy. Another needed nutrient in this period is calcium. The total requirement during pregnancy is 30 gram to the fetus, 28 gram to the placenta, 1 gram to the maternal tissue, 1 gram of calcium, where 2/3 is being transferred to the mothers to the fetus. 300 milligram of calcium and 30 to 40 weeks is being during the period of 30 to 40 weeks 300 milligram of calcium is being recommended, whereas 500 to 600 milligram of calcium is needed in the last trimester. On the whole, 80% of calcium of the fetal skeleton and mother needs is being obtained from the diet. The pregnant women usually absorb not less than 40% of calcium in the diet. Inadequate intake of calcium result in the mobilization of calcium from the mother's bone, resulting in demineralization of the maternal bones, and osteoporosis can occur in the later period. It is quite interesting to know about the role of zinc in the pregnant mother. The deficiency of zinc adversely affects the outcome of pregnancy. Apart from being a component of insulin and the enzyme system, it is also participate in the synthesis of DNA and RNA molecule, playing a significant role in reproduction. Hence, zinc deficiency leads to fetal mortality and fetal malabsorption and reduced intrauterine growth rate. The risk of low birth weight babies doubles and preterm delivery increases to about 3 times due to the low zinc intake during pregnancy. The normal requirement of zinc per day is about 12 mg per day, whereas in pregnancy 15 mg per day is being recommended, and this can be met through animal foods, especially like meat, liver, eggs, seafoods. In case of vegetarian foods like legumes, seeds, nuts and whole grain cereals. The next important nutrient is iodine. Iodine is helpful for the synthesis of thyrosin, which has been increased during the pregnancy period. It has been required about 175 mg per day, whereas in the normal women they require about only 150 mg per day. The less intake of iodine can lead to goiter, cretinism, poor growth in offsprings and neurological deficiency, which can be overcome by the supplementation of fortified salt, iodized oil and iodized bread. The next important mineral is the sodium. The sodium increases the extracellular fluid, whereas hence the restriction have to be taken place in the diet, which may cause a biochemical and hormonal changes. When sodium level in the blood drops, the kidney produces the hormone renin, which causes an increased retention of sodium, making it unavailable for the normal body function. When the system is overtasked, it results in the sodium deficiency, causing increased risk of epilepsy, prematurity and low birth weight infants. The normal sodium intake without restriction is advised during pregnancy. Sodium is restricted where the edema or hypertension is being observed during gestation period. It is quite interesting to know that copper aids in the iron metabolism, whereas it decreased in the hemopiosis, the component which is a component of many enzymes involved in protein and hormone metabolism. This deficiency can lead to anemia, poor growth and neutropenia. The normal requirement of this nutrient is about 1.5 to 3 milligram per day. It is quite interesting to know that selenium is also taken into consideration during the pregnancy. The normal requirement is only 55 microgram per day, whereas in case of pregnancy, 65 microgram per day is being recommended by the ICMR. If there is any deficiency in this particular mineral, especially selenium, leads to the fetal cardiomyopathy in young children, and in the female it will be affect the reproductive system, which will be seen in the later age. So this can be overcome by taking some of the seafoods, especially the organ meats like kidney, liver. In case of the vegetarian foods, grains, fruits, vegetables are the good source of selenium. Next, we are going to move on to the important vitamins. The vitamin A requirement during pregnancy has been computed based on the vitamin A content of the liver of the newborn. The additional intake works out about 25 milligram per day throughout pregnancy. Vitamin D is also taken into consideration during the pregnancy because it plays an important role to enhance the maternal calcium absorption. Its activity form of calcidol can pass through the placenta with ease and help in the calcium metabolism of the fetus. Since vitamin D can be synthesized in adequate amount by the simple exposure to ultraviolet rays, no recommendation of vitamin D is being made for the Indian women. The next important vitamin is vitamin K. It is being required for the synthesis of prothrombin, which is essential for the normal blood clotting of the blood. The liberal vitamin K level in the mother's blood helps in preventing the neonatal hemorrhage. Hence, it has become a routine to administer the natural form of vitamin by injection either to the mother before delivery or to the neonate soon after birth. In the next, we are going to see how a B complex vitamins plays an important role during pregnancy. The recommended dietary allowances for thiamine, riboflavin and niacin is estimated on the same basis as for the normal adult women. For example, 0.5 milligram per 1000 calories, whereas in thiamine, and 0.6 milligram per 1000 calories in case of riboflavin. In niacin, 6.6 milligram per 1000 calories is being recommended. We will just discuss about what is the role of pyridoxine. The ICMR committee has suggested an intake of 2.5 milligram of vitamin B6 during pregnancy, and it has been increased about 0.5 milligram per day. The next important nutrient is vitamin B12. Based on the vitamin B12 content on the fetus, the demand on this vitamin is estimated to be nearly 0.3 milligram per day, and ICMR suggested additional allowances to be about 0.5 milligram, and totally 1.5 milligram of B12 is being recommended during pregnancy. It is quite interesting to know about the most important nutrient that has been required during this pregnancy period is folic acid. In case of normal adult women requires only about 100 milligram of folic acid per day, whereas the ICMR recommended about 400 milligram of folic acid, which is being required for the essential for the formation of increased blood formation and the synthesis of essential components of RNA and DNA, which increases rapidly during the growth. The last important nutrient is vitamin C. The fetal requirement of vitamin C is too small to justify the additional intake of vitamins C during pregnancy, as it has been recommended to the normal women. 40 milligram has been recommended. It has been taken into consideration for the same in case of pregnancy period also. So far, I had been discussing with you about why maternal nutrition is important, how it can be achieved, once following ICMR guidelines. Next concept in this module is on diet during pregnancy. The basic principle of meal planning remains the same, but since the nutritional requirement increases during pregnancy, so emphasis should be including the nutrient dense food. For example, the food that gives more nutrients per calorie consumed. During the early month, the mother often suffers from the morning sickness due to the hormonal and physiological changes, when she should be given a small amount of foods with the increased frequency. The solid carbohydrate rich foods like bread, biscuits, fruits given in the morning or before meals helps to relieve from nausea. Also, fried, rich, flavored foods, spicy food should be avoided in the early month of pregnancy in order to overcome nausea. To meet the increased nutrient requirement of the mother, extra food have to be given. The mother can be given extra nutritious snacks in between the meals rather than the 3 meals a day, thus increasing the frequency of feeding. A feeding pattern should be 5 to 6 meals a day, so that the protein needs can be met by including a good quality protein foods like meat, fish, egg, etc. Whereas in case of milk and milk products like butter, curd can be given, which increases the calcium for the growth of the baby. She should take about 750 to 1000 ml of milk per day, so that the protein requirement can be achieved. Whereas in case of the pulses, soya bean and groundnut, which is a low in cost, which has a good quality protein, which can be recommended during this period. A combination of plant proteins and as with the cereals and pulses, so that they give a good amount of essential amino acids. To meet the additional iron needs, foodstuffs like whole grain cereals, rice flakes, puffed rice, dried fruits, these can be included. In case of non-vegetarian foods, organ meats can be given. The foods rich in dietary fiber like fresh fruits, vegetables, sprouts, whole grains, which with a plenty of fluids should be included in order to overcome the constipation during this period. Avoid highly spiced foods. As I mentioned earlier, the pickled chutneys and fried foods may cause indigestion. The last meal of the food should be light and nourishment to the body. Let us move on to the next concept of this module is the fetal nutrition. So far we have discussed about the maternal nutrition. Now we are going to see what happens in the fetal nutrition. Why fetal nutrition is important. Fetal nutrition is a complex interaction between the genetic growth potential, the ability of the maternal placental system to transfer the nutrient to the fetus, and the endocrine environment determine whether the fetus will follow its growth potential during intrauterine life. The fetus is nourished through the umbilical cord. This mix is the result of maternal nutrition, metabolism, endocrinology, and the placental perfusion and function. When considering the fetal nutrition, it is important to keep in mind that pregnancy represents the 3-compound module with the mother, placenta, and the fetus, each representing their own metabolism while interacting with each other. The glucose, amino acids, and fatty acids are the most important nutrients in the fetal life, both for the tissue for the deposition and for the fuel for the oxidative purposes. There is a considerable experimental evidence suggesting that in the second half of the gestation, fetal growth is controlled by both the maternal and placental factors. It is difficult to estimate that the relative impedance of these two components is determining the rate of the intrauterine fetal growth. Both maternal and placental factors are involved in alteration of the fetal growth rate by changing the amount of nutrients supplied to the fetus. The intrauterine growth restriction is characteristic by reduced the ability of the uteri-placental unit to supply oxygen and nutrient to the fetus. In case of gestational diabetes, on the other hand, excess fetal growth seems to be derived from the increased availability of maternal nutrients. The increased fetal fat mass in case result from the combined effect of this excess amount of nutrients and the permissive environment of the fetal hyperinsulinemia. The adequacy of the fetal nutrition is of utmost importance for the fetal growth and wellness. The relative needs of the different nutrients, however, are difficult to ascertain and depend mainly on the calculation obtained at birth or more recently during the second half of pregnancy at the time of the intrafetal blood sampling. Moreover, the fetal nutrition depends on the both maternal and placental factors that interact in the complex way. I think you have learnt about in detail on the maternal nutrition and fetal nutrition. Now let us see the another important concept of in this module is maternal determinants. The maternal metabolism changes during pregnancy is to supply the fetal placental unit with all the additional needs. The mother's adaptation to pregnancy consists of number of changes that affects the metabolism as well as the function of the fetal placental unit through hemodilution, reduction of peripheral resistance to the blood flow and reduction of blood pressure, most of all within the placental desert and the hormonal changes. Maternal nutrition and metabolism vary further during the course of pregnancy. The beginning of the pregnancy is characteristic by storing the substances mainly within the adipose tissue. This is achieved through the maternal hyperphagia, which together is where the changes has been seen in endocrine allows an increase in the maternal net body weight. This is a period when the fetus is very small but developing its organs, and the quality of the substrates obtained from the maternal circulation prevails the over quantity. During the second part of the gestation, the fetus growth at the exponential rate and completes the structure of the important systems such as the central nervous system. The next aspect in this module is a placental function. The fundamental role of placenta is ensuring the normal fetal growth has been recognized both with respect to its function in the fetal and maternal transfer of nutrients and also regarding its metabolic and endocrine effect on the regulation of maternal and fetal metabolism. The placenta is not only a passive filter, it is a role in active representing the main regulatory of the fetal placental metabolism. The nutrients are transferred to the fetus by the placenta through a complex mechanism involving a transport system present on the thromboplasm, microvillus and basal membranes and on the endothelial membranes of the fetal capillaries. Moreover, extensive placental metabolism has been demonstrated. Therefore, though the maternal concentration is the main determinants of the fetal glucose, amino acids and the fatty acid concentration, the placenta acts to determine the composition of the fetal. The last concept in this module is the fetal nutrients. The most important nutrients of the fetus are represented by the glucose, amino acids and fatty acid together with many micronutrients such as vitamins and ions. During the last decade, the number of studies has been analyzed the composition of the fetal blood by the intrafetal blood sampling. The relative non-invasive procedure has been facilitated the studies of the placental supply of the nutrients and the hormonal status of the fetus during the second half of pregnancy. By this means, it has been possible determine the relationship between the fetal and the maternal glucose concentration from 18 weeks to the last term. In pregnancy, the fetal glucose concentration decreases during the second half of the gestation depending upon the both maternal glucose concentration and gestational age, with the fetal concentration always lower than the maternal. So, no significant glucogenesis has been demonstrated in the fetal placental unit even in the growth restricted fetus. In contrast, for the most amino acids, no significant changes has been observed at the different gestational ages with the fetal concentration higher than the maternal concentration. However, so many studies have been performed in human pregnancy in vivo by infusing a stable isotopes into the maternal circulation has been demonstrated that no essential amino acids, the fetal concentration are mostly obtained by the production within the placenta from the metabolic related amino acid. For glycine and serine and the glutamate and glutamine. This is a part of intra-organ cycle between the placenta and the fetal liver. Next, we are going to see about fatty acid metabolism. The fatty acid represents a very good model of relationship between the maternal diet and the fetal growth and wellness. The fetus needs more essential fatty acid and its derivative. The N6 and N3 acids, although fatty acids supplied to the fetus are largely determined by the fatty acid composition of the maternal blood, the placenta is able to performally transfer AA and DHA, that is nothing but N6 and N3 to the fetus, which is carried out by the means of the combination of several mechanisms as recently reviewed. This has been described as a process of biomagnification. The fetus shows higher the percentage of AA and DHA compared to the mother, probably finalized to the central nervous system enrichment. The fetal fatty acid plasma composition should be influenced by fatty acid metabolism in the placenta and the fetal tissues by the human placental tissues shows no activity of either D6 or D5 desaturase, and although LC-PUFA synthesis for esterified fatty acid, which is the precursor, has been demonstrated to occur in the preterm infants as early as 26 weeks of gestation. The other reports has been estimated that the contribution of endogenous synthesis to the total plasma in terms of neonatal is small. For an energy point of view, fatty acids being less important at the beginning of the pregnancy and instead becomes a greater importance near the delivery when they represent the energy stored in adipose tissue. By studying the pregnancy at the time of in utero fetal blood sampling, saturated fatty acid proportionally increased during pregnancy in the fetal plasma. Next, we are going to see about what is the role of the micronutrients metabolism that happens inside the mother's body is essential at every stage in the fetal growth and development, although their studies is quite complicated due to the interaction between them. The retinoic acid is essential for signaling. The others like zinc are essential for stabilizing the enzymes and transcription factors and the central components of catalytic process like copper and iron. The iron deficiency, besides being associated with maternal anemia and an increased risk of maternal hemorrhage, has been related to an increased placental weight ratio and the predictor of cardiovascular diseases in adulthood. Almost the vitamins, the fat soluble vitamins, plays an important role as to their antioxidant capacity, protecting the cells against the damage induced free radicals. There is a complex interaction between N3 and N6 fatty acid and fat soluble vitamins. To summarize this module, diet is important matter in pregnancy period. Infant is one sense like a parasite, drawing all the nutrients from the mother's bloodstreams and also the food elements it's required. Furthermore, the women's basal metabolism goes up to 5 to 10% during pregnancy, reflecting many physiological and hormonal changes in their body. So, good balanced diet, which should provide about 2500 calories per day, is being recommended and prescribed by the ICMR. The diet of the women during pregnancy must be one that contains all the essential foodstuffs without at the same time imposing many unnecessary strain upon her excretory organs. During the first trimester, the quality improvement of the nutrient has been recommended. By the end of the second and the third trimester, both quality and the quantity improvement of the nutrient is being required, so that the maternal nutrition can be achieved by following or adapting the ICMR guidelines, and the fetal outcome will be good. Thank you.